Welcome back to today's video. I'm so glad to have you here back in the kitchen at Thuja Hill, and I have something to share with you today that I hope will be a big help to you in your kitchen. So without further ado, let's get started. Well, for today's video, I am excited to share with you our favorite lentil soup recipe over here at Thuja Hill. Now, this has become a weeknight staple for us, especially during the seasons of fall and winter, but I find myself, even on the cooler days of spring, enjoying this lentil soup, and so I'm excited to share this recipe with you today. I did post on Instagram not long ago a link to my blog, which I will put in the description below, that has the exact measurements and instructions for this recipe. So if you want that information, it's over on the blog at www.thujahillhomemaking.com. So what I love so much about this recipe, and really lentil soup in general, is that it is so versatile. You can add or omit many of these ingredients to your liking. It's also a very frugal and budget-friendly recipe, and it offers a night of the week where you don't need to have meat. With the exception of the homemade chicken stock, it's a meatless meal. Now, this is an adaptation from the recipe from Cookie and Kate, which I will also link in the description below. She has a great recipe, and you could follow hers and be just as happy. But this recipe I've adapted to suit our family's particular needs. So what I use for this lentil soup is, I use coconut oil for sauteing my veggies. I use 3 carrots, celery, 1 large onion, fresh garlic, curry powder, cumin, and dried parsley, kale, or any green of your choice, brown lentils, a big can of diced tomatoes, and salt and pepper to taste, and a splash or 2 of white vinegar at the end. So really, this is a very easy recipe. You can put it in your slow cooker if you want. I really love doing it on the stovetop in my Dutch oven, and so that's what we're gonna do today. You will also need either boxed or homemade chicken stock. Okay, so early this morning, I got started on my chicken stock. What I did was I just took a frozen chicken carcass that I had in the freezer, and I put it in my Le Creuset with some onions, allspice, and bay leaf, and covered it with water and let it simmer away on the stovetop for a few hours. After that was done cooking, I allowed it to cool and strained it into jars. And so now tonight, when I'm making our lentil soup for supper, I have homemade chicken stock ready to go to use as the base of this recipe. Additionally, I really think that lentil soup begs for homemade sourdough bread. Because it's such a simple dish, having a nice hot piece of homemade bread alongside the soup is a great compliment. And so this morning I went ahead and got my leaven started in order to make a truly daily sourdough bread. I have the recipe for that on YouTube. I will link that in the bio below as well if you're interested on how to make that. With that recipe, you can start your leaven in the morning and have your bread ready for supper by 6 o'clock that night. To me, that is liberating, because if you've forgotten to ferment your dough the day before, you can still get a decent rise and a good loaf in about 8 hours. And so I'm gonna be doing that tonight. I have my bread over here. I prepared my dough this morning, and it is just about ready to be rolled out and prepared for the oven. But I'm gonna get started on my soup first, and so where I start with that is by cutting up my vegetables. So let's go ahead and do that now. Now for the garlic, some might say the best part. That might be what I would say. This garlic is actually still hanging on really well. It is the Enchilium red garlic that I planted last fall and harvested this summer, and it's done really well in the house this winter. We still have several cloves left, and I'm using it and they've held up really well. So storage-wise, Enchilium red has seemed to be a really good pick. I'm glad it went in the garden again this year. So I'm gonna use 4 cloves today because I'm feeling in an extra garlicky mood. Can't really go wrong with more garlic, in my opinion. A couple more cloves here, and then we're gonna get on and saute these vegetables in some coconut oil on the stovetop. Smells so good. Just those combination of vegetables and a fat mixed together smells so delicious. Okay, so now that we've got our vegetables sauteing over there on the stove, we are gonna add our spices and our herbs. We're gonna do a healthy heaping tablespoon of dried parsley, 3 teaspoons of cumin, and a hearty tablespoon of a good curry. These are the key players in giving your lentil soup that delicious spice that is so memorable. All right, we've added in our spices and our herbs, and now it's time to put our homemade stock into this mixture on the stove. So as I mentioned, I made this morning. It was a pretty quick process, between an hour and an hour and a half. I did it because I knew I wanted to have soup tonight. And so it's just a quick and easy way, just putting some chicken bones on the stove in the morning and letting them simmer away for a couple of hours is a great way to have a quick homemade stock. So I'm gonna go ahead now and I'm gonna put all of these jars into my Dutch oven. Alright, I've got my stock in and I went ahead and I covered my Dutch oven. So now I'm gonna leave that on the stove for the next 5 to 10 minutes to simmer away and get nice and hot before I add the rest of my ingredients. Okay, so while I am waiting for the soup to come to a simmer, I am gonna go ahead and get my bread ready for the oven. What I'll do is I will take it out of the bowl and I'll stretch and fold it one last time. And I'm gonna use the bread lame on it and try to make some kind of a pretty weeknight design. This is a good time, if you are making a homemade loaf of sourdough bread, to go ahead and give it its final rise, because the soup is going to have to cook for about another 30 minutes once we get the lentils in. And so this is an ideal time for the bread to be doing its final rise while the soup is cooking. Now we're going to go ahead and cover that. And now we're going to get on adding the rest of our ingredients to our delicious lentil soup. Okay, our soup is simmering away. I am going to turn the heat down a little bit, and we're going to go ahead at this point and add our 1 cup of brown lentils and our can of diced tomatoes. This is a great time to go ahead and add your salt and pepper to taste as well. Now this mixture will sit on the stove for the next 30 minutes and simmer away. Once that's done, we will go ahead and add our green of choice. In my case tonight, it is kale, along with a splash or 2 of white vinegar. And then we'll let it simmer for another 5 minutes, and voila, it will be ready to enjoy and eat. So our soup has been simmering for the last 30 minutes. It looks thick and rich and delicious. And this is the perfect time to put in our kale. So this is going to go in along with my 2 splashes of white vinegar. Okay, well, while my soup is simmering away for another 5 minutes, it's time to turn the oven on and get our bread in. So this will be timed pretty well, in that the soup will be hot while the bread is cooking. I like to have fresh hot bread out of the oven with a nice hot soup. And so the goal is to get them on the table hot at the same time. Now the good news about a pot of soup is you can just keep on turning the heat on and turn it down when it gets too hot. That part is really versatile. The bread is a little more picky. So we're gonna go ahead now while the soup finishes out cooking and score this bread and stick it in the oven. Okay, here is our soup all ready to go. It looks fantastic. Smells delicious. And I'm actually gonna go ahead and give it a little taste just to make sure we've got all of our seasonings and everything balanced out. It's so good. That is a great soup, perfect for a nice cool spring night. So that's it, my friends. That is our favorite lentil soup recipe. I hope that you enjoyed today's video, and that if you don't already have a favorite lentil soup recipe at the ready, that you would think about trying this one. It's one of our family's favorites, and I hope that you enjoy it as well. And as usual, friends, I thank you so much for coming back to today's video, and I look forward very much to seeing you in the next one. Goodbye for now.